So if that doesn't get your heart rate going, you may want to check it. You maybe did. I don't know. It's one of those things that pretty much every morning when you start that car, it gets you going, no matter how tired you are. It's just kind of one of those things. It's hard to explain, but it just has that sound. And this one's been enhanced a little bit. So anyway, it's been a few weeks since I've done one of these videos. Not sure how many people really watch them, but it's fun to talk about cars, even if it's with yourself, right? So anyways, I picked up 2022 ZL1 a couple weeks ago, which was kind of somewhat of an unexpected purchase. I had been trying to find a 1LE, just a regular SS, and then I kind of came across this in the search. Like everything else right now, pretty much you get what you get, and if you find it, you're lucky. Almost 9 out of 10 of these, when you come across them, they're already pre-sold, and I think similar to with all the makes, a lot of these are being built and then they sit for months waiting for chips before they're actually shipped, or at least that seems to be the case. There's a ton of 1LEs out there that have just been sitting, but this one, I actually found it, reached out to a friend I had worked with in the auction business who works down in Kentucky at Dan Cummins, and she checked and they actually didn't have a deposit on it. So I lucked out. A lot of people, it is a 10-speed auto car, which maybe why it was more available than a 6-speed car. I had one of these back in 2017 when the ZL1 came out, in a 6-speed manual. And yeah, manuals are most of every other car I have in the garage here that's mine is a manual. But I like manuals. They're fun to drive, but the ZL1 was not. When I had that in 17, they put a kind of like what I would call a performance clutch in these, and it's just not comfortable for around town driving. It's hard to get it modulating just correctly. So I actually said if I got another one of these, whether it was a ZL1 or a ZL1 1LE, which would have been kind of like the race car one with the manual suspension, I would actually wanted the 10-speed auto if I could find it. This is the first car I've had with that 10-speed auto. That was the transmission that was co-developed with Ford, and they're tuned differently between the two companies, and this car ships remarkably quick. It's not as quick as the GT500 DCT that I had a few years ago, but it's pretty close. And of course I did have an axle back. We did put an axle back exhaust, an MBRP axle back on it, within a few days of getting it. They have a really good stock exhaust on these with the valves that change and open and close, but you always can use more sound, and this one has for the price is really hard to beat sound wise. Car is rapid blue is the color. This is actually a C8 Corvette color, I think, and then for 2022 they put it on the Camaro. You either love it or hate it. I love it, and a lot of younger people who see it really like the color. And on the ZL1, one of the options this car has is the exposed carbon weave, in the middle of the hood instead of just the standard black. If you look, there's kind of a carbon fiber texture to it. It's definitely worth the cost. I'm trying to think what else this one had. There's not a lot of options on the ZL1. They come pretty loaded. It does have the red seat belts. You got to have those. The car's not fast enough without those. The ZL1 is, for those of you who don't know, it is 650 horsepower. It basically has the LT4 motor in it, which was, for those of you who are GM fans would remember that was the Corvette Z06 motor of the C7. It is a supercharged 6.2 liter V8. Like I said, 650 horsepower, 650 pounds-feet of torque. I like how they have the individuals who build these sign them, which I think is kind of a cool trait. And they actually have been doing that on the regular SS motors lately that they're being built in Bowling Green, the Corvette plant. So anyways, it's definitely one of those cars that's it's a lot of fun to drive, obviously, with that type of power. But at the same time, it's definitely not a car that in this day and age would be seen as very EPA friendly in terms of pollution or gas mileage. But when you're buying a car like this, you're not worried about that. It has a gas guzzler charge, and I think it's like $2,500 gas guzzler charge, and I think the car gets like 14 miles to the gallon. But at the end of the day, it's not a car you drive every day. It's kind of a fun type of car, but it is definitely a beast. And you know, it's funny how things have changed, because back in 2017, when they were still making the C7 Z06s, you know, these cars were not real easy to sell for dealers, and they weren't a wise purchase. I got rid of mine pretty quickly, you know, because if somebody was comparing this to a Z06, like a 1LZ Z06, I mean, back then, it's hard to believe it, but, you know, they were just counting, you know, you could get $7-8 grand off a Z06, and, you know, 1LZ, you weren't too far apart on a ZL1 versus a Z06. And so, of course, the people were going to, more often than not, take the Corvette. Now, fast forward to 2022, the C8 Z06 is, whenever they decide to make those, you know, they've been delayed, and it's still hard to get a regular C8 Corvette, which is, you know, under 500 horsepower. So it doesn't have the LT4 or the higher horsepower supercharged type of motor that the Z06 did. Now these cars actually have a good niche, and they've become very popular again. And like everything, they're hard to get. So it was a good time to have one. You know, I don't know how long, like anything, I don't know how long I'll keep it. But it is fun to drive, and I have often said the C7 Z06 was one of my favorite top 3 cars I've owned, mainly because of that engine. It's the torque in that motor is just incredible, down low, and it just has power everywhere you need it to be. So they do have some cool features. It is massive rear tires, wheels on these. They're basically 20 by 11s in the back and 20 by 10 wheels in the front, 305s in the rear, 285s in the front. I don't know if I can capture the width of those tires, but when they talk about steam rollers, these things are massive. On the inside, these do come with a lot more comfortable Recaro seats than the Mustangs. I mean, if you get a GT500 or a Mach 1 with the Recaros, they're very uncomfortable for long driving, and you lose the heating and cooled function, which on the ZL1 you actually retain. The other thing that's kind of cool about these cars is they have the heads-up display, which is standard on the ZL1. So we'll see if we can show you a couple of the internal things that are kind of cool. I don't know if you can see it out there on the dash, but it reflects the speed up onto the dash, and of course with the speedometer, like the Corvettes. The other thing, it has one of the coolest features. You know, it has a traditional rear view mirror, but then if you push a button, you fold this down, you actually get a wide view camera. It's actually digital, and you can move it in and out depending on how you want it to, you know, if you want to have it up close or if you want to see more of a remote, you know, distance. And where that's being driven off of is actually off of the I'll show you the tail fin in the back. There's actually an additional camera there in addition to the typical rear view camera. You know, these have wireless Apple CarPlay in them, standard, which is pretty cool. I'm glad that they're adopting that technology. You know, the Miata had it last year, but you know, it seems like a lot of the American car companies are doing it too, which is cool. You don't need the wire anymore. It's a really easy to use system. The gauges are very customizable. On these, you have magnetic ride control, so you have 3 or 4 different modes for the suspension. Track is extremely tight, and then touring, of course, is for like your everyday type of driving. Like I said, you get heated and cooled seats on the ZL1. And this one, like I said, does have the 10-speed auto with the paddle shifters. And I mean, it thing shifts. If you've driven the 10-speed in a Mustang or a Camaro, I mean, you know that it shifts extremely fast. But it can be a lot of fun if you put it into the manual mode and keep it in 4th or 5th gear, where the revs stay kind of at the 3,000 range. You get a ton of pops and crackles with this car. I did post a video a week or two ago asking, guess at what car it was. It was this car. If you want to hear if you're an exhaust fan, you can listen to that on my Facebook page. And, you can hear kind of the crackles and pops on the car. So that's kind of the interior. These kind of have, I mean, it's kind of a gimmick thing. I mean, the Mustangs had this for a while, to where you could change the lighting depending on the ambient lighting. You can see this, you can make your car look like a disco when you're driving. I mean, it just depends on what you want to have. So you can link it to the drive modes. You can see the colors changing. They kind of run along the dash and the door. So the Camaro lights up. Anyways, it's kind of a unnecessary thing, but it's kind of cool to have. I don't think if there's anything else really with these. Just a lot of power for the money. One of the other things that's kind of cool that people always talk about, they call this the flow tie, because it's actually clear, through, so for air filtration. If you really look at these cars, I mean, they did not want any issues with cooling with these cars. They have massive intercoolers throughout the car. In the front, the whole grille is pretty much open. And you've never heard any issues, whereas they had some trouble with the early Z07, Z06s overheating. They never had any problems with these on the track. But I mean, realistically, this car will just see driving duty around the east side of town. But it's been a lot of fun, and I was pleasantly surprised to be able to find one. It's a good alternative when you compare this to some of the other stuff that's out there in this price range. It's a ton of value even today. It's hard to buy these cars when 2 or 3 years ago you could have, they were selling for 10 grand off sticker, and now you're paying sticker if you're lucky. So it's different, but it's a different time. And I think the other thing to remember with the Camaro is that it's probably near the end, so it won't be too much longer. Whether it's 2023 or 2024, they're going to kill this car again. It just doesn't sell well. It's a niche market. Obviously GM's moving towards electric, like a lot of manufacturers. It'll probably come back as an electric car, either a SUV or a all electric type of coupe or sedan, even, who knows. So it's a good time if you like gas muscle cars. It is a fading availability for some of these, particularly with the Camaro. So, anyways, I figured I'd give you a little synopsis of what was in the garage that was new. So that's the latest toy that I'm playing with. Like I said, other than that, I still have the Miata, the Laguna Seca, the Nissan, and the Miata. It's definitely a different variety of stuff, but I'm fortunate to have some different ones to try out depending on my mood. So anyway, that's really it. That's all I had. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and you're having a good summer so far and staying well. Take care. Oh no!